This is ContactTalkRadio.com. Consciousness in action. And you are taking action into your consciousness by tuning into Contact Talk Radio.
And on TuneIn.com, Ping.fm, and UpSnap Mobile.
Contact Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Bad Girl's Guide to Living Well with Heather Wdowin, NMD. Spend time with Dr. Heather and her guests for tales of love, adventure, and how to be healthy and happy. Now, here's your host, Dr. Heather Wdowin.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Bad Girl's Guide to Living Well. We've been off live for a bit, and so hopefully you can enjoy not listening to reruns. And we have a topic today that I think is good for the season because I want to show you how to optimize your immune system using natural means so that you can decrease the likelihood of getting the flu. One of the reasons I hold this dear to my heart is because I think the flu shot is, let's just say that I run a practice where I encourage people to avoid toxicity as much as possible, and the flu shot still has mercury in it. If you follow our Facebook page, The Bad Girl's Guide to Living Well, or the companion website that this is tied to, which is naturopathicmd.com, our Facebook page, Naturopathic MD as well, we shared a video on what happens when you put mercury and aluminum together. And it's a really wild video, and you can check it out if you're on Facebook, but they interact in a way that makes sense why it can really have a lot of nerve damage and neurological and immune decimation, because those metals aren't supposed to be in your body and they can have terrible detrimental effects. And thimerosal is still used to preserve flu vaccines. Now, I may be, shot or put on a list for talking about this, but many people that I speak to that get flu vaccines, they've never been sicker. Plus, the problem with it is that usually the CDC or the powers that be behind it, they just guess as far as what they think the flu is going to look like at any certain year. And so sometimes they guess right, and sometimes they don't. So regardless, we want to support your immune system so that you don't necessarily have to worry about getting the flu, or you can heal faster from it. And I want to talk mostly about herbal medicine, but in the way that I practice, I never really look just at one therapy. And while herbs are probably my favorite one, there are certain things that couple with it very, very well to optimize the effects. And I like to look at this. I work with a lot of people that are very technically bent, and especially in our culture where we have a society of, I'm doing this via Zoom and, virtual. So I like to look at it as software versus hardware. And software tells a computer system how to work, whereas the hardware is what actually does the work, right? So herbs and botanical medicines, I like to think of as software. And they help you to steer the way that the body reacts in a way that optimizes your system for so many different things. And herbs are good for, the right ones in the right doses are good for just about everything that can go wrong with the body. And the really cool thing about herbs is that they have so many different chemicals in them that they aren't good for just one thing. And so that's the software side of it. And the hardware is really nutrition. And you can look at it as orthomolecular nutrition, where you're superdosing certain vitamins or nutrients, or just good nutrition that you're getting from food. And so that's the hardware. But the herbs are really great because they steer the body more towards health when used correctly. And they tell the body how to heal. And so when herbs are done right, most of the time you don't have to take them forever because they've actually taught the body how to heal itself. And I really like creating herbal tinctures and compounds so that the different aspects of the herbs can work together and make them stronger in synergy than they would just by themselves. And you have to remember that herbs and botanical medicines are seen by the body as food. They aren't altered. And so not only do they have all of these components that work together, they also aren't when used correctly, and some can be toxic. And we won't talk a lot about that because most of the ones that you can get on the market, you don't need to worry about. But they are identified as something that you would eat. And you can think of it, everybody gets all hot about the paleo diet and how, if you eat in the way that we would have eaten, 20,000 years ago, the body recognizes it better because that's the way that the body has evolved in order to, work best, as far as the people that, ate certain things survived so that they could propagate and have offspring. And so that's how our bodies have changed over time. And things like refined sugar and grains weren't really part of that when a lot of our, human metabolism was being set down. And obviously this is the bad girl's guide to living well. And so, wine's not paleo, beer's not paleo, chocolate brownie fudge sundaes aren't paleo, but what I want to teach you is how to have a little bit of balance so that you can enjoy things that are a little bit decadent and not paleo, and maybe we didn't evolve being able to metabolize optimally without having it completely wreck your health. So let's talk about some baseline things that you can do to help improve your immune system before we even get into the herbs, because these are things that you can do at home just about immediately in order to make sure that your system is able to fight what it's supposed to be fight. Now, one of the cornerstones of what we talk about at Naturopathic MD and here on the Bad Girl's Guide to Living Well is stress, right? Stress is a big killer. I have a family member whose immune system was just decimated because of stress. And we were trying to figure out, why does he have this crazy problem that's going on? It doesn't make sense. He's eating really well and he's exercising and he's young. And yet we see this really big problem coming up with all of these viral infections that are causing a lot of issues in his body because, and from what we've seen with the extensive workups, I think that it's really just an overreaction to stress that pushed it over the edge where it suppressed his immune system so it could no longer fight. Because remember, your immune system is designed to protect your body from invaders and repair your body. And inflammation is how the immune system reacts to invaders or damage. So if you sprain your knee and it gets red and swollen and hot, that's because extra blood is going into the area to repair it and bring different growth factors, et cetera, in there to make some, repairs so that you don't necessarily have to walk with a limp for the rest of your life. Now, when you have chronic inflammation and things like autoimmune diseases, especially, then what that is the immune system just going off of the rails and not knowing what it should attack and what it shouldn't attack. But with infections like colds and viruses and even bacterial pneumonia, and when you have bacterial infections or viruses and fungus as well, that's a really good reason for the immune system to get hot and bothered and attack those invaders, because historically, if we're going to be talking about how humans have lived on the planet for however many years, infections killed more than possibly anything else in history. And a lot of that was because of sanitation, with people not washing their hands or not having access to good food, or the ability, or access to a witch that could, brew them up a brew of herbal medicine to help kick the crap out of that infection, because they burn them all. But that's besides the point. So the infectious problem is still a significant issue. And we see that because we have a lot of people that have imbalances in their microbiome and their digestive health, and you have a lot of bacteria in your digestive system that help you to remain healthy and support the immune system. And that's a whole other topic. I'm not going to go into it a whole lot, but probiotics are one of the best ways that you can support your immune system during a time, well, just about every day for the most part, unless you're immunocompromised, but most of you aren't. So probiotics are a great way to just support your digestive system and the immunity that comes along with it in a safe and effective manner. Now, there's testing that you can get, and we do offer a lot of extensive testing on naturopathicmd.com, where you can get a stool and, microbiome assessments so you can see where your levels are, whether they're optimized, and whether you have bad guys in your gut that need to be killed and then put good guys back in their place. And so there is that option. But for the most part, taking a good probiotic is a really nice place to start. We can do genetic assessments as well, just to see, or assessments as well, to see whether you have a genetic propensity or likelihood to need more bacteria than others. And what we do is we try to piece all of those pieces together in order to make sure that you're optimized. But for the sake of this, you can find a lot of good probiotics. One of the best ways to determine which one you want to go with, if you're not going to go with a pharmaceutical grade, like you can find at my website or things that I post, if you go to like Whole Foods, I don't know if they even have as much of a vitamin department anymore because it's all online, bought by Amazon. But as an Amazon lover, I can't really argue with that. You want to get refrigerated probiotics. You want them to come out of the refrigerator section. My favorites are actually made by Master Supplements, and they have a really great one called Theralac. And then there's another Bifido Pro. And I personally take the Bifido Pro not only because it helps with hangovers. I'm also genetically less likely to have good Bifido levels in my body because of my genetics. It's not just because of the hangovers, I promise. But there is good research showing that bifidobacteria helps reduce them. I'm not quite sure about the mechanism. That's just an important fact that I like to share. So the bifidobacteria and lactobacillus are two of the main ones needed for your GI health and your immune health. Now, and I would consider that hardware. So other hardware, as far as the supplementation goes, is vitamin D. Everybody's got, they've gone a little crazy cross medicine about vitamin D. And the funny thing is, I live in Northern California where I haven't seen the rain since March, basically. And it's sunny almost every day. And yet so many people that I test in this area are low vitamin D, or they're certainly not optimized. Usually your vitamin D lab levels will be from 30 to 100. And optimum is really between 60 and 80. And so if you're not in there, you're not getting the anti-autoimmune effects or the really good immunosupportive effects of vitamin D. And if you're in that range, great, but you're probably supplementing. And supplementing with vitamin D, the only thing you have to really be careful of is if you have the tendency to make calcium kidney stones. Nobody likes kidney stones. They're called they're equivalent to labor in men. And so we don't want to give you kidney stones by mobilizing calcium, which goes along with high doses of vitamin D. However, if you are a person without that sort of tendency and you've been taking vitamin D, you're probably taking maybe 1,000 IU, maybe 5. There's a researcher out of Harvard that did some toxicity studies, and they showed that you could take much higher doses of that for a longer period of time and have no toxic effects. My vitamin D levels at their highest were about 120, and I didn't have that. I checked anyway, and I didn't have any negative effects from that. Now, research has also shown, especially in an elderly population, people over 65, that if you dose in higher amounts over a shorter period of time, the absorption is actually better. And so how does this work into getting rid of the flu? I have a lot of nicknames, and Dr. Evil might be one of them, but Dr. Miracle Worker could be another one. And mostly that's associated with just kicking the crap out of the common cold. And there was a research study a couple of years ago, it's probably like 5 or 6 now, that showed that if you dosed 50,000 IU of vitamin D over 3 days when you started to feel the onset of a cold, the symptoms and that progression of the cold resolved so much faster than they would have otherwise. A lot of times the symptoms are just knocked right out. And that goes to show how important vitamin D is. And especially as we get into winter and fall and the days are shortened and you're not getting the exposure to the sun. Plus, most of us wear sunscreen anyway, which keeps us from making vitamin D. And if you're under stress, it also keeps us from making vitamin D. And if you don't sweat for 8 hours in the sun and then that shower for 36, you can't absorb it anyway. And so supplementing with vitamin D is a really good thing along with the probiotics. So if you take 50,000 IU of vitamin D 3 days in a row, then the cold gets the, crap kicked right out of it. Now, I had a fantastic obstetrician when I had my son, and she spent an hour in the room with me just talking about medicine and nutrition. And I love this story and I share it because it tickles me. So I was in there and we were talking about this study about the 50,000 IU of vitamin D. And obviously she, works in the hospital. She sees a lot of really sick people. And so she was exposed to a lot of gunk. And she started to get sick after we were discussing this study. And she's like, I'm going to try it. What the heck, right? What could, it's worth a try. But the only supplement she had for vitamin D in the house at the time were gummies. And so she ate 50 gummies a day for 3 days because they were just 1,000 IU in them. And she thought to herself, this is never going to work because the sugar is going to counteract the positive effects of the vitamin D. Well, it worked. And it's a great secret. And so if you can find, like I have vitamin D that I give my patients and I send to them, that's 25,000 IU in a pill, which is great because that means you just have to take 2 a day and not eat 50 gummies and get all of those calories. But that also brings us to a point of sugar being a really significant immune disruptor. It can paralyze your white blood cells that are supposed to do the work while increasing inflammatory cytokines that raise bad inflammation and yet paralyze the parts of your immune system that are going to be helping and killing the invaders. And so doing low sugar diets, and sugar counts as corn, white rice, brown rice too. I like to say that brown rice is like smoking a cigarette with a longer filter. It's still going to just turn to sugar in your system. And so no corn, no white rice, no wheat, no pasta. And so if you can, and obviously no added sugar or fake sugars to coffee or, tea or whatever it is. So by doing that, you're just giving your immune system a little bit more help by not, tying its hands behind its back. If you like to have things sweet, and you need that, sugar for whatever reason, and that's a whole other story, try honey, because honey is actually antimicrobial and it's great for the immune system. We did a podcast about honey a couple of months ago, and it is just an amazing, it's like liquid magic. And so you want to get raw honey whenever you can, because a lot of the really good aspects of honey are killed when it's pasteurized. I'm trying to do beekeeping in my backyard. I have a hive and I figure if I build it, they will come. And so we'll see what happens when spring comes. Now, I might have to get a queen, but I might just be able to manifest a little swarm back there to make me some honey. I'm sure that you can find honey in local markets, farmers markets, befriend a beekeeper. I mean, the internet is it's the best thing in the world and it's the worst thing in the world, but it's a really good way to be able to get access to resources like this that you may not be able to get locally for you. Local honey is obviously the best. And the reason that is because the bees, during their magical process of honey making, incorporate a lot of local pollen, etc., that can cause allergies and inflammation in people that are sensitive to it. And so that can actually help decrease your immune response to allergens. And remember, allergens and allergies are just an inappropriate response of your immune system to something that is completely harmless. So if you have allergies, raw local honey is one of the best ways to start addressing that from the inside out. And again, honey it kills bacteria, it kills viruses. And one of my favorite things to do when I start getting sick, which I don't get sick very often. I haven't had the flu. I don't even remember the last time I had the flu, but I also don't get flu shots. So I take one of my other favorite herbs, which is garlic, and it counts as a food. I was asked to make a list of my top 5 favorite herbs once, and I couldn't, because you have to look at what herbs are best in essential oils and what herbs are best in tincture form, and which ones would you really want on a desert island to save your life from everything that could happen, and what really count as food. And a lot of them, if you're sneaky, they count as food, and garlic is one of them. Now, the family that I grew up with and who formed my heart and my emotions and most of what's good about me was Italian. And so, garlic is like an aphrodisiac to an Italian girl. But also, I think that means that genetically, I can probably handle a lot more than the average person. So I won't tell you the doses that I do, because I've given them to people before, large men perhaps, and they didn't take it as well as I could. So you want to build up a tolerance. But this is a good place to start. If you take a clove of fresh garlic, and if any of you are foodies or like to cook, and do that culinary piece, you know that you can crush the garlic and then peel it more easily. So if you crush it with the flat side of a knife, it's much easier to peel. It also activates enzymes in the garlic that help free up a lot of the medicinal effects. So if you crush it and then chop it up finely, and just start with 1 clove, and you can work up to see how much of a badass you are. No judgment. And also, it depends on how often you dose it and how well you can do with it. So you crush it up, and I put it in a tablespoon, and I cover it with honey, and then I eat it. Don't chew it. That's just asking for trouble. So if you just swallow it like a pill, it's like a honey meow. And the antiviral, antimicrobial effects of the garlic are going to work really well with the honey. The honey is going to make that tough taste go down a little bit easier, and it won't make you smell so bad. Not that I think that it makes you smell bad, but they work really beautifully together. And what I often do is I will do that about every 2 hours until I start to feel better, along with the vitamin D, which is 50,000 IU, 3 days in a row. You don't want to go much further than that. That has been well researched to be safe as far as vitamin D. And the garlic and honey, really you can do it as well, as often as your palate can handle it. And so another really good food that you can take is turmeric. And when we want to, everybody knows I'm crazy about turmeric. Or curcumin, the curcuminoids in turmeric. And well, that brings me to a point, actually, so turmeric, which is our kitchen spice, is curcuma longa in Latin. And in it, it has curcuminoids, which have a lot of the active effects that we see with being anti-dementia, anti-diabetes, anti-heart attack and stroke, helps with memory, it's anti-inflammatory, it's good for the gut, it's supportive for the liver. It's involved in over 100 different enzyme systems in the body to make them work better. And yet turmeric isn't very well absorbed orally unless you give it with fat. And there's a recipe that you can find online called golden milk. Wellness Mama has one that's pretty good. I like to use cashew milk with it, because I think cashew milk's the closest thing to real milk without setting your immune system on fire, which again, if you're sick, you should probably avoid dairy. Dairy is one of the biggest things that cause phlegm in most people. And so that allergen is a good thing to avoid when you start to get sick as well, especially if you're snotty. So I use cashew milk, and then I throw in extra coconut oil, because I think that it helps absorb the good constituents of these herbs that are in golden milk. It also has cinnamon, black pepper, cumin often. I like to throw a little cayenne in mine because I like some spice. You can find recipes for it, and I'll post my favorite, actually, that I learned about when I was down at a cancer hospital in Rosarito, Mexico, called Sanoviv. And they made it for their patients every day. And they were dealing with patients with complex chronic diseases, chronic viral infections, cancer, autoimmunity, all sorts of things. It's a great hospital. Anybody that gets a cancer diagnosis, I tell them to go there. It's a really magical place. And so they cook beautiful food for people every day with these fantastic chefs, and they make golden milk every day. And so I'll share that recipe with you at Naturopathic MD on Facebook, and also this Facebook page, The Bad Girl's Guide to Living Well, so that you can start doing it at home. It's kind of like chai, and it's delicious, it's warming, it's a really nice winter drink, and it has a lot of herbs that are good for the digestion. Cinnamon helps lower blood sugar, which is good for the immune system as well as working against diabetes. It's a fantastic drink, and I really like it. You can also make a cold form if you're not into hot drinks by adding a little bit of ice and maybe some protein powder. So if you look at herbs like turmeric, or even we did a whole episode on cannabis for 420 this year. And we talked a lot about the difference between herbs and pharmaceuticals. And I think it's an important distinction to make, as far as a lot of herbs are often used as pharmaceuticals, like, well, you have a cold, take echinacea, or like you're tired, take ginseng. And that's a little bit reductionist and just treating symptoms. And most of especially the initial drugs that were patented by pharmaceutical companies came from herbs. The first blood pressure medicine was called reserpine, and it came from Rauwolfia serpentina, which I have in one of my blood pressure lowering supplements that don't have this, that addresses the overall reason why people have high blood pressure. But the reserpine was just one constituent out of hundreds in that herb. And those constituents work together. And we talked a lot about this in the cannabis lecture, because cannabis has so many different bioactive molecules and chemicals in it that when you take one out and make a pharmaceutical like Marinol, for example, it's just not as effective, and you get side effects. And often also we talked about how herbs are really recognized as food. Once you take out the one constituent that has been the best research to have blah, blah, blah effects, superdose it, leave out all of the others, and then attach a functional chemical group on it so that you can patent it. Because remember, natural substances cannot be patented at this time. Hopefully not ever. But once you do that, the body no longer recognizes it as food. The liver has to detoxify it, the kidneys have to detoxify it, and that's when you start getting side effects associated with these things. A good example that I like to use is with Lovasa, which is the fish oil, prescription strength fish oil, which some of the side effects are flu-like symptoms, nausea and vomiting, etc. It's like, what do you have to do to a fish oil molecule to make it give you feelings like you have the flu? I don't want to know. I'll just take the fish oil because you've got all of these different aspects. It's not just one. You're eating a complex food that the body recognizes and can use all of the different things that balance each other really well with it. Now, fish oils, I get a little crazy. People ask me, what my favorite things to take are. And that's like choosing a kid. But fish oil, for its anti-inflammatory effects, is definitely up there. And so you want to get a good high quality fish oil because it's going to make every cell in your body stronger and less likely to be inflamed. And so that's another way that you can support your system. So we talked about vitamin D, we talked about probiotics, and now a little bit about fish oil. And I don't think we can keep up this discussion very much more without talking about vitamin C. Now, this might be TMI, but I think I take vitamin C almost to bowel tolerance. And I have a powder that I stir into my drinks because it makes your whole system stronger. It helps with fatigue. It helps with your immune system. It's anti-cancer. And I just stir the powder into my drinks because I like sweet tart things anyway. Add a little bit of honey. One of my favorite things, well, we'll get to that as far as the vitamin C recipe. But bowel tolerance means if you take too much vitamin C and you can't absorb it, then you can have a little bit of GI upset. Last time I got a little bit of a cold, I had to speak in the evening. And I dosed myself. I'm an expert, right? And so I know how to push my limits, and don't try this at home, but I super dosed myself with vitamin C, and I had to give a lecture that lasted 70 minutes that night. And my stomach was just going blah, 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 the whole time. And I thought, I might have to run out of here because I've been a little bit of an extremist. So don't do it if you have to do public. Everything worked out all right, but you might want to, go a little bit easy. I recommend people doing between 7 and 10 grams a day. You do want to do it out in divided doses, and everybody's a little bit different as far as what they can absorb or what they can tolerate. I've taken some massive doses of vitamin C orally, and when I was sick, I think my body upregulated my ability to really absorb it because they were massive. That's a lot of pills to swallow. I have a lot of experience doing high dose vitamin C IVs, which are where you take purified vitamin C and you put it into someone's veins that are highly anti-cancer, really good for the immune system, et cetera. And so it's not something that you can really overdose on. I just don't think that you could eat enough of it, but don't test that without, having a professional helping you. Now, the other thing that I like to superdose, which you have to be really careful about, right? We talked about vitamin D, and we talked about it's a fat-soluble vitamin, and so it can have toxicity associated with it. You can build up levels in your body that can cause a weakening of like moving calcium, etc. The doses I'm talking about for vitamin D, you're not going to have to worry about that. But vitamin A is highly antiviral. And vitamin A is also a fat-soluble vitamin, so you have to be careful about it. But people taking 400 IU of it, you're not going to have to worry about it being, toxic. I've taken a lot of vitamin A because it is so incredibly antiviral. So I regularly put patients on 10,000 IU, very small little pill, especially if they've got any, history of mono or HPV, or just need an immune support because they've got other chronic viral infections, or as flu support. And you can get those higher doses. I think you can get them on Amazon, but if you want, Naturopathic MD has them as well as part of our supplementation packages, etc. Now, if you have specific questions about herbs and things, you can contact us by sending us a Facebook message online, or you can call in at 844-389-8255 if you have specific questions that you would like to ask me during this. So we're about halfway through, and we will get to the herbs, I promise. I just get so excited about the hardware too, because they work best together. So vitamin A, you can do a good 4,000 IU without having to worry too much, depending on, your system. And when I superdosed myself, I got a little nauseous, and I was like, well, I should probably back off on that. And so vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin C we talked about, and the probiotics. Now, zinc is another really important thing that you can take, and you can do about 10 milligrams up to 25 milligrams, but you always want to take copper with it. And you can see this, there's zinc lozenges, and a lot of people know that zinc is good for the immune system, but always it's best to take these things together because they have a synergistic effect that the sum is more than a parts. Does that make sense? And so we talked a little bit about turmeric, and I've talked about turmeric a lot, and so get it in your golden milk. And that's a regenerative therapy that you can do because we are going into a season where, we want to go and have some rest. And it's kind of like a hibernation season, and build up your body from the stress of the holidays, from eating too much at Thanksgiving, just before we move into a time where seasonally, if you support your body seasonally, there can be some really amazing things that happen. So before I run out of time, and we don't even talk about herbs, let's talk about some of my favorites as far as looking at stress first, because when you're under stress, your body secretes something called cortisol, and cortisol can put body fat on your belly, but it also sounds a lot like cortisone, doesn't it? And cortisone is used to paralyze the immune system. And when you have high levels of stress, it can decimate your body's ability to fight what it should inherently be able to fight. And if there's any of you out there that aren't under stress, email me and let me know, because I would love to talk to you about how you're making your life choices and model that. So how do we deal with stress? Well, there's mindfulness. Everybody should be doing some sort of mindfulness exercise. I personally really love the 15-minute recordings that you can find on YouTube for free by Abraham Hicks. There's one specifically about health, and you just plug that in and listen, or meditate if you have your own process and your own habits. Doing journaling, laughing, giving yourself a little bit of gentleness. All of that can help decrease your stress hormones. Get hugs. Have awesome sex. Those things also help too, I promise. And now, the other aspects you can do, sleep. You need to sleep. If you get sick, sleep. It's when your body repairs. It's when your hormones are able to get more in balance. And if you have trouble sleeping, we're going to do a whole podcast on sleep, I'm sure, sometime in the near future, but also you can get safe, effective sleep packets at naturopathicmd.com that can help get your body into a place where you're able to naturally sleep effectively. There was a study that came out in 2012 that showed that if you take a sleep medication that drugs your brain into sleeping more than 17 times a year, your risk of getting cancer is the same as if you smoke cigarettes. It increases the risk about 30%, which is crazy because people take these, hypnotics like Lunesta and Ambien, booze, NyQuil, Tylenol PM to drug themselves to sleep, because if you don't sleep, you go crazy. Sleep is one of the most healing things that you can do for stress and for body repair, and especially when you're sick. So if you have trouble sleeping, that should be one of the number one things that you address immediately. And you can wear those, yellow blue light blocker glasses that I put on Instagram a couple of days ago that are totally nerdy, but really effective if you're on your devices late. Or just turn them off 2 hours before you go to bed. Don't watch TV. Do a crossword on paper. Read a book on paper, or something that doesn't have to do with the electronic light, because you'll be able to sleep better. And if there's other issues, then you can always contact us at naturopathicmd.com, and we can help you understand a little bit more about how you can get good sleep. So sleep, you definitely want to avoid sugar. And let's look at my notes here. There was another one, mindfulness. We did talk about that. So we will get a little into my own, personal habits at the end if we have time, as far as how I keep my immune system working with basic natural things. Obviously, you want to drink a lot of water, especially if you've got hard mucus that's hard to get out of your lungs. You can drink a lot of water, and that helps loosen it and help you cough it up so you can get all that gunk out of there and you don't keep the bacteria in there. And we will talk a lot more about hydrotherapy in a little bit and the healing effects of water. But let's talk about essential oils. Everybody's crazy about essential oils. You can get, 15 different multi-level marketing, companies for essential oils. I just like to get mine on Amazon or Whole Foods. I get the organic kind. I need to get some for my dogs if you can hear them barking in the background and knock them out. So the two favorite essential oils that I have that I use is steam inhalations, and that's either putting them into like steaming water and you can put a couple of drops in the steaming water and then cover your head with a towel and breathe that in, and that helps with coughs and your lungs. Otherwise, you can put them in a humidifier, which is what I do, and usually all winter I sleep with a humidifier that has eucalyptus in it. Eucalyptus has been really well researched to be it's anti-MRSA, it's anti-lung cancer, and it's antibacterial and antiviral. So we're going to take a quick break right now while I go discipline my dogs, and we'll be right back in about 30 minutes or 30 seconds.
Tired of taking massive rips off your water bomb and antioxidant-rich, essential oil-powered pipe potions to the water in your bomb and smoke smarter? We have 6 sexy flavors to choose from. Some are soft and sweet, and others are powerfully pungent. We like to think of them as flavors with benefits. Follow us on Facebook or Instagram to learn more about our pipe girls.
Well, that was perfect timing because you got to hear a little bit about essential oils and how they can help with antioxidant bases if you're taking massive rips off your bong, which is good to protect you from the damage of smoking. So thyme is the other essential oil that I really love. And you can either make a thyme tea using something in your medicine cabinet, or otherwise it's a really good essential oil to have. And you can also do steam inhalations. You can mix them together. Thymol and menthol from eucalyptus, and eucalyptol, or menthol from mint and eucalyptol from eucalyptus is they're in Vicks Vapor Rub, and they're in a lot of cough drops. And so if you get them from a really good, holistic source like an essential oil, you're also going to have those benefits without the toxins and the sugar that come in most of those cough drops. I do like Ricola because it's herbal, but there is a lot of sugar in it, but it can be very helpful if you're going to have a sore throat. My other sore throat favorite thing is like Throat Ease by, I think it's Yogi Teas. And so if you think about, like, teas are usually herbal, and you can find all sorts of really good combinations. Yogi tea is great for those. Now, with those essential oils, you can also put them on your skin. I often will put, and you don't want to do them by themselves. You want to put them in like a carrier oil, like coconut oil with a little bit of eucalyptus and some thyme essential oils, and rub it on your skin. They're absorbed through the skin, but they're also good because you absorb them when you breathe them in, and you get them right to the tissues that need them. Now, if we go into, well, let's talk about the stress. Okay, so if you're under stress and you need to support your immune system because the stress is knocking it out, then there's a couple of favorites I really have. And the 2 that I think are most important here, because they're also antiviral, or the 3, they're antiviral and they're also adaptogenic. And so they can help support your body in being restorative and rebuilding it, so it's less susceptible to all sorts of diseases. So the adaptogens are ashwagandha, astragalus, and licorice. And I love black licorice. And I might eat a bag of it every now and then and say it's medicinal, but it probably isn't because it's got sugar with it. But licorice is actually also very good for your respiratory system because it's soft and it soothes it, and it can help with coughs as well as decreasing your issues with the virus because it is antiviral. And remember, we want to kill the virus so that it's not necessarily giving your immune system a whole bunch of hell. So ashwagandha, astragalus, licorice. If you need things hotter or you're actually really fatigued, ginseng is a great one. It doesn't have as strong antimicrobial effects, so killing off the bugs, but it's also very good. And if you have trouble sleeping, like I was saying earlier, one of my favorite herbs for that is passiflora, or passion flower. I actually have it growing in my backyard. Some people think it's a weed because it's so hard to get out of your backyard once you plant it, but it's beautiful. They look like alien flowers from another planet, and they are also very good to help with stress. They're a nervine, so they help decrease anxiety, and they can very, very gently help with sleep. So that's with like sleep and stress and fatigue, and all of those are very good for that. So if we want to look at other anti-flu things, let's talk about sambucus or black elderberry. And this is something that's safe to give even to small children. It's a very great antiviral for colds and flus, and it is fairly delicious. So you can get it in cough syrup. Often it is combined with zinc, and it's an easy thing to take. And I don't have to convince people to take it because it tastes good usually. Whereas withania and astragalus, not so much. I think it's, which is ashwagandha. Ashwagandha in Hindi, I think translates to smells like wet horse. Still good for you, maybe not the best tasting. So we get it in capsules, not liquids very often. But you can find sambucus just about anywhere. Most grocery stores will have it in their like natural remedies section. And you just want to look and make sure that you don't have a whole lot of sugar in that, because black elderberry is fairly sweet by itself, but our American palate loves sugar. Remember, sugar cuts out the immune system. So OSHA or ligusticum is another, I think it's ligusticum. There's an lamatium as well. And they're both very good for the immune system, and they taste terrible. And so if you get it, make sure that you get it in capsule form. Medicinal mushrooms. So I cook with medicinal mushrooms a lot. I've started substituting them instead of white button mushrooms, partly because white button mushrooms are so incredibly toxic. They're high in heavy metals and other problems that come out of the soil they're grown in. And so I only eat organic mushrooms, but I've just figured, why not use the medicinal ones? So like maitake, lion's mane, reishi, and shiitake. If you get them fresh, then you can put them into anything that you would use a mushroom in, and you don't get a lot of that really bitter taste that you get from dried mushrooms quite as much. Fresh, they're great. I make them in like chicken marsala, I'll put them in, or beef dishes with mushrooms, and you're getting really good polysaccharides that stimulate the immune system. And that's what we really want to do. We want to wake it up so that it goes and it fights. And we want to make sure that it's supported with the tools that it needs to be able to go out and fight. So those mushrooms are great. You can also get 7 mushroom teas that some people drink instead of coffee. I love coffee, and so I don't do that. I cook with them instead. But you can get capsules of that as well. And they're highly anti-cancer, very good for the immune system and viral infections, and pretty easily found in most places. But you do want to get organic because mushrooms pull things out of the soil. And before we run out of time, in California, we have something called Prop 65, which warns us when we have cancer-causing chemicals in the environment or in foods or containers that can cause cancer. And it's really good for a lot of reasons when it warns us about BPA or lead or things like that. But you may see in supplements that you buy that are labeled for California sales that it'll say substances in this supplement have been shown to, have the ability to cause cancer, which can freak some people out because they think, well, I'm taking a supplement. Why is this going to be dangerous for me? Everything that grows out of the ground will have toxicity in it. Things that are made in a lab by a pharmaceutical company, even though they may be more dangerous, don't, because they're done under sterile compounding procedures. And so that rule, as good as it is, was actually backed by a lot of big pharma because it made supplements look bad. That being said, you don't want to buy them from China because usually the standards for being clean aren't as high. There's a couple great farms and good herb companies in the United States where you can get high quality, clean herbs as much as possible because they're being grown out of the ground. Herb Farm, which is Herb, PHARM, Wise Woman Herbs, and Gaia Herbs are the 3 that I usually concentrate on using because I know that they're clean and they're coming from US farms, and most of them are raised organically, which is a plus. Now, another really good antiviral that I'm just loving more and more, it goes along with my Italian theme today, olive oil and garlic, right? Well, olive leaf is really antiviral, and it's very, very good for you. It actually can clean the plaque out of your arteries. Isn't that great? It's good for the liver. And so that's what I love about herbs, is that none of them are good for just one thing. If you distill it down into being just for one thing, then you're missing 99% of the power that they can actually have. So olive leaf is great. My favorite, Gaia Herbs makes my favorite because they do like a supercritical extract that they get out with CO2, and it's a clean product. I worked for them for a time, and so they're some of the best, and it's in a capsule, so you don't have to taste it, but it's still a liquid, so you've got a really good concentrated format. So that is about it for the herbal aspects that I want to talk about. Nettles is always good because it helps with histamine. It's an antihistamine. It stabilizes your mast cells. So when you're feeling all swollen and you've got like sinus pressure and congestion or even allergies, nettles and vitamin C and essential fatty acids like omega-3s can really help calm those cells down so that they're not releasing as much histamine. And it warrants being said, I know some of you may be saying, well, why didn't you really mention echinacea? And I think echinacea is overblown. It's got research for it for being good for colds. But by the time you have the symptoms of a common cold, the virus is usually gone. And it's your immune system overreacting and just causing this inflammatory cascade that it can't get over. And one of the ways that echinacea works is one of them, because there's different formats or different species and they have different actions. One of the ways that it works that's been researched is that it suppresses your immune system so that the cold symptoms go away. And, there is a time and a place for everything. But if my symptoms are so bad that I can't sleep or I can't breathe or I can't see patients, that's the time I take Dayquil. I'm not going to take echinacea for that. But some people love it, and it's a good thing if you're going to be using the one that actually supports your immune system rather than suppresses it. And now I want to talk about two of my favorite things, because we only have a couple of minutes left, as far as other wet socks that are cotton, and you cover them up with wool socks. Now, the wool socks keep in the heat, and what this does is it creates an artificial fever in your body. And fever is something really important to stimulate your immune system. One of the biggest mistakes we've made in medicine is to manage fevers that aren't dangerous. Now, fevers can be dangerous when they get really high, but if it's low grade, that's actually stimulating your immune system and giving it a supercharged ability to go out and fight. So do this before bed, go to sleep, and I promise you, your sinus congestion will be better, your lungs will be better, and your immune system will have been able to do its work. Couple it with some vitamin C, rub some essential oils on your chest. I also like to take really hot baths with essential oils in there. So I'm raising my body temperature at the same time I'm getting essential oils that help with my breathing. Then I go outside in the cold and I let it steam off of me, because when you do hot and cold therapies, they can work really, really well together in kicking those white blood cells off of your blood vessels so that they can get to work. So that was quick. Sorry for the dog barking and the technical difficulties, but this is Dr. Heather Wdowin. We've been talking about how to protect yourself from the flu and cold season. If you have any questions, you can contact us on our Facebook page, which is Naturopathic MD, or through the Bad Girls Guide to Living Well, another Facebook page that we have, and share tips and pictures and things like that about cooking and adventure and all of the stuff that we love. And we will see you next Friday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And if you have any questions, please let me know. I hope you have a beautiful day.
You've been listening to the Bad Girls Guide to Living Well. Join Dr. Heather and her special guests every Friday at 2 p.m. For more information, go to www.naturopathicmd.com or follow her on Instagram at naturopathicmd.